I'm really super excited about this episode because this is on my heart, and I know that's on your heart. So what we're talking about today is talking about family and missions. And I have with us right now is Dennis Hurley. And I brought Dennis on because he does a lot with missions, and he is right now probably could run our Mission Arlington youth trip by himself, but also takes groups to Philippines and takes his family with him. So, Dennis, thank you for coming. Thank you for being
here. My pleasure.
Here.
Thank you for having me.
And so let's just start off. I mean, what is the joy of bringing your family with you on a mission trip?
Well, the youth now today, I think it's just very important that they actually see something that is different from where they are normally plugged in at. So, whatever their community looks like, whatever their community is, and even more specific, their little corner of that community, because we tend to isolate ourselves into people of like-mindedness. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to see that there are people out there that live life differently than you do, especially in how they have opportunities to not only engage in the community or not engage in the community, but what they actually have. And that varies from, if you look at poverty in the United States versus poverty in Mexico or Guatemala or Nicaragua, or go to places like the Philippines or Africa, poverty is different. And looking at a study recently that poverty in America is 32 times graver. So the poverty level in the United States, what we consider to be poverty,
right,
which oftentimes means that you have a roof and a car and an iPhone and TV and cable, air conditioning and electricity and running water. Poverty in the United States is 32 times, the level is 32 times more rich, I guess you could say, than international poverty. And so what we consider poverty, considered to Africa or the Philippines even, is different. And I think it's not only important for a lot of our youth nowadays to see what poverty looks like in the United States, because it does look different than a lot of teens think it does. But international poverty is something different. And I really think that when the youth goes off onto a mission trip, they go to explore an international mission trip, they get to see something that is completely different than what they're used to. And I really believe it makes them think more about how we are blessed, how God is blessed not only the United States, but blessed each of us individually to be in a position to actually have running water in the house.
Exactly. We've asked, we brought a whole bunch of youth ministers together, and we asked the question, how do we get our students to own their faith? And it was unanimous. Missions,
absolutely.
Because they're there, and they're exerting their own faith strength in an environment, and sometimes it's proving wanting. And that struggle is there. Yeah. So we realize that how important missions is when it comes to development of a youth's faith, and that's where me as a youth pastor is engaged. But whenever I also bring mom and dad, so being able to watch mom and dad see their children struggle with this or do well with it, whatever.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of the thing that I want to use our time together is talk about how when it comes to so when you went to the Philippines, you brought members of your family with you, right?
Yes, my son has gone to the Philippines with me. Last year he went. This year he's not going to get to go, but he'll go back next year with me.
Okay, so let me ask this question: How did you cast the vision? And I know it's probably pretty easy for the son going, "Hey, let's go to another country," right? And but then I can imagine talking to your wife. Hey, I'm going to take Caden with me, and knowing your wife had no trouble, but perhaps there's some hesitancy sometimes to go.
There is.
So cast the vision.
Okay, so if you are. I'm experienced in international missions. I've been to a number of different countries and a number of different trips. So I know what to expect, and I know when we get in country, what it's going to look like, what to bring with me, how to go about daily life, and then how to get engaged in whatever we're doing. Now, since most of my stuff is with martial arts ministry,
Right.
going and working in communities using martial arts as a tool to get out and to preach the gospel. But I've also done, in conjunction with martial arts ministry, building as well. So you get in building churches, building halfway house community homes, or building homes for people that literally have no homes. Bringing a family member along into that is a little bit different. And I say that because now, as far as I'm concerned, I'm willing to go wherever God sends me, and I'll go meet with anybody.
Yeah.
And there's almost some, not a reservation as far as thinking about my safety.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with that. But now that my son's coming, that's in the back of the mind a little
Right,
bit.
yeah.
And so there was an opportunity this time to go meet with some tribal leaders where the Philippine government mandated we take military soldiers with us.
Wow.
And I told the leaders this time that, on this trip, let's not do that, because I had my son with me, and I was a little nervous about that, to be
Yeah.
honest. When normally I would have said, and done this before. Yeah, let's go. Okay, not a problem. So go up and
Yep.
we'll meet with them and talk with them and share Christ. But yeah, so. Being safe, I guess, is the number one.
Yep.
People always think, you're going to go to Nicaragua or Mexico, and we hear all these stories about
Arlington,
or-
Texas.
or Arlington, Texas. Absolutely, go minister in Oak Cliff.
Yeah.
Some areas that can be a little bit scary sometimes,
yeah.
And there's a lot of truth to watching out and being cautious.
Yep.
I understand that.
Yep.
So. In preparing for that kind of a trip,
because we're saying cast the vision.
yeah. So
Goes beyond
here's what this looks like. If you've never engaged in missions before, the purpose of missions is not only to go somewhere and hopefully make a difference, preach the gospel,
Right.
and let people know that you care about them. And
Okay.
so we typically engage in some type of project or some type of feeding program or something to let people know, look, we're not just here to pat ourselves in the back and do, we're not here on our wonderful week-long cruise and we're going to do the 4-hour tour,
Yeah.
excursion where we get to go help poor people.
Yep.
There is that, and that's not, I don't want to say bad about people that have done that,
Right,
but
right.
that's not what we're looking at. What we're looking at is really getting into these communities and developing relationships
Right.
and letting them know that we care. And so if it's local, and I always encourage people to start local. You've never done missions before. You don't know what this is about. I encourage people to start local. Maybe that's getting engaged on a Saturday with Church Under the Bridge here in Tyler, Texas.
Right, yeah.
Or engaging in going to Mission Arlington, which is a fantastic program that has been established and it's been there in existence for a very long time. They
Yeah.
know what they're doing. They know how to run things. And so that helps, working with an organization that knows what they're doing and that has been doing the work for a long time.
Right.
You get plugged in, you
Yep.
get involved in that. And that gets you a taste. That gets you an understanding a little bit. Okay, I'm here and I'm going to do whatever I'm asked because this isn't about me. It's about
Yeah.
allowing God to work in you and through you to reach
Right.
people that are desperate for the gospel. We have a lost world, and this world is desperate to hear the gospel
Yeah.
and to see the gospel in action. So I always encourage local, and there are plenty of fantastic programs that are local.
And we can provide all those opportunities if you have a question.
Absolutely. Come talk with Steve or myself. In the karate program, one of my black belts is Walter Ballou. He's
Yeah.
youth pastor over at Green Acres.
Yeah.
And they do a lot of this as well. Matter of fact, I'm going to be up for youth camp, for karate youth camp, while he's bringing a group up to be at John 3:16 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So we'll probably cross paths
Yeah.
because we'll bring some of our karate campers over to do missions at John 3:16, kind of get them plugged in to do
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
There are many opportunities.
So part of you started off right off the bat with when it comes to casting a vision. If dad or mom, if you feel like you are there, you're like, I want to do something unique with my family. You said right off the bat, find someone or be someone who's experienced in that endeavor. Connect
Yes.
yourself with a group or be that person. For you, you've been to the Philippines how many times? 3 times. And so you feel like you can navigate the
absolutely.
airport and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And this wasn't my first international mission trip. But when I started on international missions, I was involved with the ABKA with people who had been doing it. Denny Holzbauer has probably been on I don't know, 500 international mission trips in
Right.
his life. I mean,
Yeah.
just always going
dude's
places.
amazing.
Yeah, and so he knows how to plan, how to put things together, and so I learned early on from that. My first kind of real mission, what I would consider a mission-directed trip, was getting involved with a program we had in Texas called Reaching America's Youth. RAY was the program, and the program went into local juvenile detention centers in Texas,
Yep.
so juvenile prisons,
Yep.
and going in on a prison weekend and doing whatever you do to engage the kids that are there and to share Christ with them. And so we went in as a martial arts program. We'd go around to the different little houses, and we'd do a little program, and then we'd talk with them about what it means to have and to believe in Christ, to have Christ living in you, and how that has changed our life. And we had some incredible people on that trip. But I remember thinking, I'm going to go where? You want me to go into a prison and do what?
Yeah, yeah.
And this is an American prison. It's not even really a prison. It's youth detention centers.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was nervous-some at first and gave me a lot of pause. But I stepped forward in the faith and said, okay, I don't know why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
But I know I'm supposed to do it. I know I'm being called to do it. But I just want to see what's going to happen. It's a fantastic weekend. And since then, I've been in all kinds of prisons. Probably the worst one is MS-13 in Guatemala, where they literally took us in to do a karate program in Guatemala.
The whole prison's called MS-13?
Well, no, they had an entire section that was the MS-13 gang.
Whoa.
And so there were about 200, maybe 150 guys in this big prison block. And they literally, the guards walked you in through the main doors, and they walked you in through the secondary doors. They let us in, they closed and locked those doors.
Yep.
And then they went out and closed and locked the doors, and they left us in there.
Yep.
Have fun by yourself.
Yep. Yep.
So that was different.
Yep.
But if that had been my first experience, I probably would have been pretty nervous about that and pretty
Right.
like, oh my gosh, what's going on?
Yeah.
But so the key is casting the vision. Each and every one of us is called to share the gospel.
Right.
Acts 1:8 is the commissioning of, take the gospel to wherever you are. That could be local. It could be your next door neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe down the street you've got a widow who's struggling to keep up with yard maintenance, and she lost her husband a year or two ago. Great opportunity to just get plugged in right where you are and to care for people.
Wow.
It may be involved in Mission Tyler. It may be going over to the church under the bridge, and maybe Mission Arlington, or it could be another state. It could be going up to Minnesota with Colonial Hills here, and we go up.
Right.
But getting plugged in and engaging where you are is a great opportunity to start.
It really, really is. So we've been talking a little bit about how missions and mission trip is not easy, and to say where you're going to face a lot of the struggles. When we go together on with Mr. Arlington, we talk to the students about the four walls or the three walls are going to break through and all that kind of stuff. It is hard work. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's imagine that we're talking to some families who are like, okay, I really feel like we're called to go as a family, and I want to connect with you because you guys seem like you knew what you're doing, and so they're along with us. When those hard situations come, and so maybe if I can ask you to think of a memory, Caden, was there a moment where you felt like Caden had reached his limit in the Philippines, and there's no net right there except for you? You're the only
I'm
net
the only
that he
one
has.
there. And
What
that
do you
was
do? What do you do?
Well, that was a big trip. This last trip where he went on, we had two teams. We had 12 people go total. And so he actually had a couple other that were around his age that went. There was another family on that trip as well. And then Jonathan Housley was on that trip, and he was 17 at the time. And so, there was some days where, and that's a physically intensive kind of trip, but not as physically intense as, say, some of the building trips where you're literally building, 10, 11 hours in the hot sun.
Yep. And then
that's
doing a
different
demonstration at night.
Well, yeah, and then teaching karate classes at night
Right.
and going to the local, karate classes. This is probably longer stretched out where we're doing, 14, 15-hour days, but there's a lot of travel time. And so, we get somewhere, we're there for 2 hours, we're doing karate demonstrations, we're talking, we're teaching classes. But it's that constant, you're always on the go kind of, and it's hard to get good sleep sometimes.
Yep.
And so, he had that kind of but just by getting tired after it was probably about halfway through the trip, which seems to be about that.
Yeah.
We go on these trips for 2 weeks.
That's a long
It's
time.
a long trip, but it takes a long time to get there. It's about 25 to 28 hours of air flight. And then usually stopping and changing. So it's 3
You're
to 4
tired when you
flights.
get there.
Yeah, you're tired when you get there, and sitting for 14 hours in those little on an airplane. It is.
I don't
just
care how
not-
many movies they have there.
no,
It's
it
still
gets-
hard.
It gets hard. So he getting a little grumpy like we all do, and then the next day, and part of what we were doing is we were going to touch with a local community that the church that one of the churches we were working with that has a fantastic karate program doing community outreach churches.
Yeah.
And so this is a fishing village that we went to visit and just kind of goodwill visit. Just how you doing? Want to pray for you guys. Thank you guys for bringing the church in, the family that was there, and then we got to meet with others that in the community that maybe weren't going to church or definitely weren't saved. And we're talking a fishing village. The houses are 3 feet up on stilts, and they're made of thatch. And the running water is a 10-foot by 10-foot concrete cistern kind of thing in the middle of the community that has on the corners 2 pumps of water that flows, and that's where you get your water, and that's where you bathe, and that's where you wash clothes, and they were bathing and washing clothes there. We're talking poverty. We're talking incredible poverty, probably living on $3 or $4 a day, U.S. dollars a day. That's what $3 a day. And as we had to walk in, hike in, because there's very difficult to get to where the fishing village was at. And as we're walking out, I asked Caden, I said, "So what do you think?" And he had that shock look on his face, like, I can't believe people live like this. And we had a good conversation. In that conversation, we kind of came to the conclusion. We kind of discussed this, and he said and I said together that it's amazing on how you can do life with so little, especially when you have Christ in your life.
Yeah.
When you know that there's some greater purpose to our existence, some greater purpose to our living. It's amazing at how little you really need.
Yeah.
And oftentimes as Americans, we surround ourselves with this consumerism. We've got to have these things. We've got to just have so much, and if they get the next iPhone model, well, we've got to have that too, and upgrade to the new vehicles. And I think there's a lot that the Bible says about that.
Sure.
And that's for a different topic.
And Dennis, you said something that I think is I want to kind of highlight this. You said, so you're approaching this village, and you're seeing Caden's countenance kind of fall, quizzical. And then you engaged his heart and said, you said, he and I said together. You reasoned and you found a solution together.
Yeah, we had a conversation. It wasn't long, but it was on the walk
Sure.
back, about a 10-minute conversation,
Sure.
walking out. And it just started with, "What do you think?"
What do you
and
think?
it was just like, wow. And then I asked, well, what do they need? What do they have? How does that compare to how we live our life? When we think of poverty, what does that look like? I think the stats show that if you have a refrigerator, electricity, and plumbing, then you're in the top 10% wealthiest people in the world. Wow, the top 10%?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and certainly in Americans, what we think of poverty is not poverty. Poverty in America means you're in the top 2% of the wealthiest people in the world. Yeah, it's just amazing.
I'm still. What do you think? What a great intro question. What? And I think you can ask that question anywhere.
You can.
You can be going to school. You can drive by that house that you always forget about, tucked in the woods, and you can see your son or daughter looking at that area. You just say, "What do you think?" And that's a missions moment right there.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And both my kids have done missions, have been involved in missions since they were young. I remember. Even way back when we were doing, I think, Bolter Middle School, going out and helping out there and doing some stuff. And they were out, raking at, however old they were, second grade or something like that. So they've been involved in that, especially with things like Mission Arlington and Church Under the Bridge. But this is different. And so we started off the conversation. How do you get involved? What's the vision? The vision is getting active, getting involved, because ultimately it's like the 40 Days of Purpose book. It's not about you.
That's
and
right.
missions is not about you. It's about a response to what God has done for you and in your life,
Right.
and how you respond to that, and how you let Christ lead his life through you to reach others, to care about others, to love others, but also to preach the gospel, to share Christ.
Exactly.
And so when we do that, and we do that locally, that's a great way to get started. And eventually, I'm a firm believer that I think every youth at a church, before they graduate high school, should go on an international mission trip.
Right.
I think that's not that you want to culminate and stop right there. Okay,
Right.
I'm 17. I've done my one international trip.
Exactly.
Hopefully, it will progress to more, and they will continue to stay involved in church, stay active in missions, and especially international stuff.
If I can put a plug in real quick,
Yeah.
and I know you're going to for your trips too, but the youth ministry is going to be going to Santiago in 2020 with that same idea, is to say, I think that you're right.
And when's that date, Steve?
It's June 14th through the 24th. It's a 9-day thing.
9 day.
So yeah. All right. So I'm gonna switch gears for a second.
Okay.
Right. So we talked about vision. Okay. So a mom and dad feels like, okay, I'm here, and I want to do this together as a family, and they've connected with a group, with an organization, and we talked about kind of protecting, how to. So here's the switch. How do we let them do what they were designed to do? So now we're talking about letting.
Yeah.
So like Mission Arlington, they're in a apartment complex where normally we would lock the doors, and now we're in this place of going. I'm going to let my kid go and talk to these people who are very much They look like gang people, and they probably are. So letting them do it. How do we do that?
As a parent, that can be difficult. It can be challenging. So it's a multi-step process.
Sure. Okay.
The
So take
first
us
thing
through
is we want to make sure that the kids are safe.
Yeah.
But we don't. Being risk adverse or being riskless is not where we want to be as Christians. I think an important prayer that every Christian, especially parents, should make is, God, help me to be uncomfortable. Put me in uncomfortable places so that they don't see me, they see you.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's a difficult
It isn't.
prayer. But I think we need to be more mindful of that. And so that may mean that you have to let go, that you have to allow them to enter into a little bit of risk. Yeah, we want them to be safe, and so Mission Arlington, we have leaders that are looking out for your kids,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
and making sure that they're safe,
Yep.
and that they don't engage in something that is obviously dangerous,
Right.
going into places that are obviously dangerous. But yeah, they may be involved with people who don't speak the same way, and maybe use some crude language, or don't understand why we're there or what we're doing. So the first step is allowing to be God present in the moment and trusting on Him.
Yeah.
Ultimately, God is in everything.
Right.
He's not causing
Okay.
bad things to happen or anything like that. But God is in every moment.
I can imagine parents nodding right now.
Yeah. So
okay.
God is in every moment. So we have
With
to
you.
be comfortable trusting God to allow that to happen.
Yeah.
To be in that moment, and then. We have to allow our kids and even encourage them to engage in things that they don't want to do. I didn't want to go to that first prison trip that I did many years ago, but I did. I was, tried to be faithful to that. And so we have to be encouraging. Yeah, maybe they don't like talking to people,
Right.
and that's okay. But you know what? You can't go through life not talking to people.
Exactly.
And so we have to be encouraging of that. And then after something like that happens, we have to follow up. You can't just say, "Yeah, it was cool."
Perfect. Wow.
You've
yeah.
got to. It's important to have family discussions when the moment happens, and especially after it. And Caden and I have talked about that moment on the beach.
Yep.
Since then, but to talk about what that really means, and to talk about from a Christian perspective, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And from a perspective of allowing Christ, that allowing Christ to work through you, getting out of the way, and allowing Him to do what He wants to do, being led by the Spirit.
Yep.
What does that look like, and how does that look there? And so what that ultimately will hopefully lead for is a child that is bold in sharing their faith. And parents, if you've never had that opportunity, it's pretty cool to see your 15-year-old daughter share faith with someone who's twice her age and got kids and is having a tough time, and leading that person over a couple days to trust in Christ.
That's right.
That's a pretty neat experience.
It really is. And I've said this, you've heard me say this multiple times. If you've never seen that happen, then do a family trip.
Yep.
Do a family mission trip. And it also, I tell teenagers the very same thing what you just said. Hey, have you ever seen your mom or dad share Christ? And they're like, no, because all they're just talking to me about homework and taking out the trash. And I'm like, if you want to see them do what they were designed to do, be okay with having your mom and dad come with you on a mission trip for like Mission Arlington,
and make sure that they see it. Don't
okay.
And with our family, it's the toughest because that's who we're most open with.
Yeah.
They're the ones that hear us when we don't use that proper language. And they're the ones that see us throw that tool across the yard because something's not happening.
Yeah.
Oh wait.
Yeah.
Oh,
you
yeah.
can't give that kind of detail.
Yeah. So we're they see us at our most vulnerable points, and so sometimes we think, well, I can't get out there and talk about this because I'm messed up. Well, welcome to Christianity.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, none of us are perfect. Now we are made perfect because of our faith in Christ.
Sure. Yeah.
But we still struggle with that whatever that sin problem is, we still struggle with it. It'd be nice if we could, just put in, we got that hardware, and it'd be nice to just reprogram it, but we can't do that.
Reboot.
Yeah, and now I'm, Christian superhero Christian number 101 or whatever. So that's important, is to engage, is to go ahead and put that kind of thinking out of your mind. Yeah. I recently got an opportunity to preach a couple weeks ago, and Caden came up and said, he was very encouraging, but it's like, that's the first time I've heard you preach. I'm like, son, you've been all over the place with me. Heard me do devotionals, heard me engage people, heard me before crowds. I've been in front of 3,500 students, but he hadn't really heard me do an hour-long kind of preaching before, and I'm thinking, has he not been involved in that? And so that follow-up questioning after an event happens. So if you're there and you're sharing your faith to someone, it's important to follow up with them about, okay, what did you think?
Yeah.
How would you have handled that?
Yeah.
Was there something I missed? Did I leave something out? That was that was nervous.
So you're
as a parent, I was pretty nervous. Did I leave anything out? Was there a better way to do that? How could have you done that? And so you're prepping them to share their faith as well.
And so as you're even saying this, again, still kind of visualizing in my mind, some families are like, do we do this? Do we not do this? And so
do it. The answer is you do it because you're called to do it.
You're called to do it.
Yeah.
And it's worth it. The struggles are worth it. Yeah. Those conversations that you're describing, and it may sound foreign to some families, and I get that.
Yeah.
But to have those conversations, it changes the dynamic of the relationship.
If you want your kids to really understand Christianity, and if you want your kids to have a better chance at being able to understand the world, and have a good defense for when they go off to college, go off, to do their own life, if you really want to give them the best opportunities to stand up to all the crap that the world wants to throw at them, you have to engage that early. You have to engage it in the home, and you have to have conversations that sometimes lead to difficult things.
Yeah.
If you're not doing that, and if you're simply just going about life, and I understand we're all incredibly busy, and it's difficult sometimes to carve out that time. But if you're not doing that, you're not having family dinners or a time where you can once a week or twice a week or every day family dinner, whatever you do, you've got to at least have some of that.
Yeah.
And that better prepares your kids for when they go off into the world.
That's right. Man, I think that's a great way to end right there with what you just said. It's worth it, and it's worth to go for that. So Dennis, thank you for spending some time
pleasure.
with us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I want to ask. So you're going on. There's a Philippine mission trip coming up.
Yeah, in a couple months we'll be going back. I'm taking a team of 7 back to the Philippines. That's a yearly trip, and it will probably get to a twice-a-year trip for me.
Okay.
Then later in the year, through the ABKA, the martial arts stuff that I do, the karate stuff. Probably later in the year, I'll be going down to Brazil, and then beginning of the year going to Mexico.
Karate, no karate family, still come talk to you, right?
Yeah, come talk to me. Sometimes we put together trips that are strictly construction building trips, and or if you're looking where to get plugged in and how to do this, come talk to me anytime. I'm more than happy to help people go on missions.
We have Santiago. We got tons of things going on. So Dennis, again, thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.